heute gehen wir wieder auf Lego Rewind. Und heute geht es um richtig geile Sachen. Und zwar Lego Power Miners. Let's go. Ja, fuck it.
Everyone, welcome to episode 3 of LEGO Rewind, where we take a look back at some old LEGO themes and the trends they started. You can find the whole series playlist in the description. Today we'll be comparing two very similar themes. Let's start with Rock Raiders, released in 1999, using cutscenes from the game to tell the story. I'm afraid I haven't played that game, so I won't be reviewing it or nothing. I just wanted to acknowledge it. In the probably not so distant future, the crew of the LMS Explorer are out mapping the galaxy when asteroids knock them into a wormhole that spits them into a different galaxy altogether. With their ship damaged and its power failing, they turn to a nearby planet rich with minerals that should give them enough of a kick to jump back to the Milky Way. With no other way home, they must brave the horrors lurking in its dark bowels or die alone on the mysterious planet. Right off the bat, I love this premise. It almost sounds like a kid-friendly version of Alien. Even the Explorer looks like something you'd see in one of those movies. I remember Bennett the Sage saying something in one of his older Anime Abandoned reviews that really affected my view of sci-fi. He said there's a spectrum within which you'll find most stories that envision our future in space. At one end, you've got the likes of Star Trek, the optimists where things are tidy and neat and people are free to pursue whatever goals fulfill them. Then you have Alien at the other end of the spectrum, the pessimist that paints a grimy, dim future where human lives are nothing in the eyes of the corporate overlords who put them up there to mine diamonds or whatever. Which, let's be honest, may be at least slightly more...
Ich meine, just imagine, wir irgendwann in der Zukunft bauen wir 5 Country ab. Was so ein Planet ist, der komplett aus Diamant besteht. Und, ja, dann sind Diamanten halt einfach wertlos dann halt. Und die ganze Erde denkt sich so, bro, das war jetzt irgendwie ziemlich dumm. So spät.
Probable. Rock Raiders seems to lean about 3/4 towards that end of the spectrum, but not all the way. The crew of the Explorer at least appear well off, and exploring and trying space is as noble a reason as any to be up there, but it sure has the aesthetic down. I love the design of the Explorer itself, and I was pleasantly surprised to see in close-up shots that at least some parts of it actually are brick-built. I also really like the designs of the characters. They all look so different, just wearing whatever clothes they had laying around, probably worn them for a couple days already because they didn't have time to wash up or whatever. Some of them haven't shaved in a while. I say there was much of a step up in individualizing the minifigs in their time as the Ice Planet crew were several years before. Probably the most grounded, realistic bunch of faces we've seen in a LEGO...
So, quasi das einzige Lego Space Team, wo die Charaktere nicht halt dieselbe Uniform haben.
Space sub-theme so far. It's hard for me to pick a favorite, but I'm leaning towards Jet. She's in the military, so she reminds me of Vasquez. But I don't want to leave out the real star of this line. Meet the Rock Monster, a stupid, primitive mess of a creature, and probably the first big fig ever made. Does he count as a big fig? I think he should. The theme's dozen or so sets had a messy and surprisingly effective aesthetic.
In einem anderen Kontext könnte das statt Stein einfach Schokolade sein, ich weiß nicht. Sieht nicht so steinig aus.
If I told you today that an upcoming line of LEGO sets was mostly going to consist of various shades of gray, with a little black and brown and smatterings of yellow, dark turquoise, and transparent fluorescent green, and even the occasional bit of trans orange, you might see a pukey mess.
Star Wars. Ist ganz viel grau und dann manchmal irgendwo wird doch irgendeine andere Farbe hingepackt. Das, also, Teal ist jetzt da nicht so krass, aber es gab mal so einen tealen Druiden, so einem Y-Wing. Ansonsten, die Neonfarben sind halt ausgestorben leider. Aber gelb sehen wir doch ziemlich häufig.
Your head. And by all means, all these colors side by side shouldn't look good together. It flies in the face of color theory, but Rock Raiders makes it work. It gives the vehicles an earthy, run-down feel, like some of them haven't even been fully painted by...
Außerdem ist das so sortiert so irgendwie. So geordnet, keine Ahnung.
Whatever company supplied them to the crew. And the bits of turquoise and yellow stop them from feeling too glum. They just have a cool industrial vibe that fits the dark environment they're working in. Before I give my final thoughts on this theme, let's jump around and look at Power Miners.
Oh yeah, let's get los. The GOAT. The GOAT.
Underground is making Earth's surface unstable, and natural disasters are reaching apocalyptic proportions. So the Power Miners embark to find the source, which turns out to be a race of super-powered rock monsters hopped up on energy crystals. Yeah, some things never change. The story may not quite be something to write home about, but the sets are good.
Die
I actually
Steinmonster
still
sehen
have
jetzt
some
cool
of these,
aus.
sorta.
Und
I dug
tatsächlich
them
nach
out of my
Stein.
dad's attic at his place after leaving them up there for years.
Oh,
Those
geil.
who have been following me long enough on DA may even remember these photos I took 8 years ago.
Oh
I'll
my
link
gosh,
them in the
okay.
description. Fun fact, the giant black wheel on this revamp I made was cannibalized from this set, which I've
Whoops.
since replaced with another wheel. They have a much more uniform color scheme than the Rock Raiders. Bright colors like lime green and orange, and a little bit of white, which makes them feel a little more like the mining equipment used today.
Slager fand das nicht so geil, weil er meint, dass coole und brighte Farben nicht so krass aussehen für Mining Vehicles, aber halt ein Maul, Junge.
Rock Raiders' vehicles felt like they'd already seen some use or been cobbled together from pieces of other ones, but these feel like they were just shipped out and put to work recently, and the crew all wear the same blue overalls and helmets that do at least make them pop against the colors of the vehicles. I also like the placement of the orange being almost exclusively on the actual...
Das war so eines der ersten Lego-Teams, das so die Piloten irgendwie komplett anders gemacht hat als die Fahrzeuge, so. Keine Ahnung, dafür waren die meisten die gleiche Farbe.
Digging bits, highlighting their usefulness. I can see how this more unified look will make power miners less interesting to some people, but I think it works the same way most space themes do.
Yeah.
I will say I don't care much for the minifigs. They do have some personality, like this Bruce Campbell looking chum, but they're pretty weak sauce compared to the Rock Raiders.
Ja, keine Ahnung, ich kann auch nicht. Ich kann auch immer nicht merken, wer Duke ist und wie die anderen alle heißen.
The vehicles focused on functions, mostly ticket-based, to feel like they're really digging, and most of these functions, from what I've seen, work great. The first wave made a strong first impression, showing the theme's best qualities in almost every set. One of the things that appeals to me most about this line is the all builds. These fit right in with the actual sets, and they are so inspiring. I have no doubt someone out there bought doubles of these sets just so they could have the normal builds and the all builds on the same shelf. I'm surprised by just how many of these they were able to whip up, and I can see different uses for each one, and they look great together. The first two waves were solid, the second maybe a little less so, as they seemed to put their best foot forward in wave 1, but things got a little weird after that. Anyone who's seen the core will get the idea. Power Miners took an interesting turn in 2010, as they broke below the mantle and found lava monsters. Not needing to dig any deeper, they beefed up their equipment to endure the heat, and the focus shifted from digging to weakening the lava monsters with water and capturing them. The drills and saws were replaced with grabby claws and pretend water guns, and these parts were changed from orange to blue, to better convey the water theme. I used to think this was an ugly color combination, but it's probably the best choice they could have made, especially needing to stand out against these mostly orange backgrounds. I only got one of these sets, and to my surprise, it actually looks good next to the earlier waves. I wish they went a little further with a miner's protective gear. Coming down this far would be like standing on the surface of Venus. You'd have to wear a protective spacesuit so the air wouldn't burn the inner lining of your lungs.
Ach komm, das ist Lego. So, du regst dich über Realismus in einer Lego-Serie auf, Junge. Nicht mal eine Serie, warum ist ganz so weit rangezoomt, ich weiß nicht.
This second year was disappointingly short-lived. Only 4 of the theme's almost 20-ish sets were released in this wave, and then the theme just disappeared. And this is something I've seen happen to a couple of other themes, like Atlantis, a theme I'm sure made M-Tron fans happy with all the new parts. The first wave was...
Naja, nicht wirklich. Das ist halt hier so super rund und das ist M-Tron nicht wirklich. Außerdem ist das falsche Grün.
The second was more of the same, and then a third wave comes along the next year that changes up the aesthetic a little bit, and then the theme just ends. At least Atlantis had a story that got resolved. Power Miners is just left open as far as I can tell, though I do find it neat that Brains, a member of the Power Miners crew, would later join the Atlantis crew on their mission. That's something nice LEGO does now and then. They show a bit of crossover between their themes with 1 or 2 characters appearing in new ones. One example is Solomon Blaze of Galaxy Squad, leading the Ultra Agents when he's older. But yeah, this is such a weird trend I've noticed. His theme's getting a pretty full first year, and then going belly up with barely a whimper when the second year's just starting. I guess...
Ehrlich gesagt, was ich gemacht hätte, um die Referenz zu Mars Mission zu verstärken, ich hätte hier noch 2 von diesen Hornteilen hingemacht, aber halt in Blau. Weil, naja, logisch halt, warum Blau?
3 waves is okay for any system theme. It's just an awkward way to end it sometimes. I gave Rock Raiders points for its unique look earlier, but I don't want to heap too much praise on it. The builds aren't exactly great, consisting of many giant pieces whipped up for this theme.
Ich mag die Teile irgendwie, keine Ahnung, ich kaufe mir das so viel Style. Ja, Style ist der Name von dem Planeten, Junge. Wer denkt sich, ich nenne jetzt den Planeten mit vielen Höhlen Planet U, das ist so scheiße, ey.
Cockpits, those beams, the rock monsters, all of those throw the price to part ratio out of whack. For those who are new to this, the price to part or price to piece ratio isn't exactly a rule, but it's generally taken for granted that on average, you should expect around 100 pieces for every $10 you spend on a set.
Yes.
There are a lot of exceptions.
Haben die das nur wegen Mario eingeführt, oder? Nee, das war 2017. Was gab's für Sachen ohne Anleitung?
To this, like construction lines that use big, detailed pieces that are expensive to mold, or sets that feature large animals and dinosaurs that eat up a lot of plastic, or planes or other vehicles that are half made up of huge panels or cups.
Deswegen Price per Piece ist nicht so so ein guter Wert, so eine lieber Price per, I don't know, price per weight or something.
Or even licensed themes like Star Wars. This is why you might see an X-Wing with about 450 pieces retail for what you'd think would be worth 600 pieces. Or a new X-Wing that has about 700 pieces retail for what you'd think would be 900 pieces. LEGO has to pay to use that property, which in turn affects the customer as the price may be bumped up a bit higher than we're normally comfortable paying. Even minifigs are getting expensive to make, and the value of one of today's minifigs is considered to be $3 or $4. This set may seem way too expensive for its piece count.
Da waren damals die Minifiguren preislich großzügig.
But it includes 4 minifigures, not including the Womp Rat, and it's a Star Wars set, so at least a few of those tacked on $5 are going towards the minifigures, and the rest are Disney's cut. And at the end of the day, a single stud doesn't cost as much to make as a piece like this does. What's nice about the LEGO Ninjago movie sets is because Ninjago is one of LEGO's own original properties, they don't have to give anyone else a cut for a license. And on top of that, they have a theatrical movie they can expect to drive more traffic towards the sets than any commercial would, so they can afford to keep the price down a way.
Ja, dann ist der Film halt nur ein bisschen gefloppt und das hat nicht ganz so funktioniert. Aber für die anderen Lego-Movies hat es wohl der für den zweiten auch nicht wirklich. Eigentlich nur für den ersten Lego-Movie.
This is why most of the sets in this line are so darn big and have so many pieces for their prices. But don't think I'm singling out Rock Raiders for riding a little high on the price-to-part ratio. Power Miners is guilty of this too. Some of them are fair, like the Granite Grinder, Claw Digger, and Boulder Blaster, but I'd say that's probably thanks to there being lots of small, easy-to-produce pieces like you see in this heavily detailed engine block. But when you look at something like the Cave Crusher, what do you see? 12 big tires clumped together on 6 wheels, the saw blades on the front, and a big fig that has a lever on the back that moves his arm and everything. And those pieces cost money. It really isn't all bad though. I'd still say the overall price-to-part ratio is a little fairer than Rock Raiders, even if only slightly. This is a pretty extreme example. You'd only be getting 90 pieces for $20, and that isn't even taking inflation into account.
Ja gut, aber 90 Teile für $20 und dann sind solche hier. Ist eigentlich ziemlich fair, würde ich sagen. Guck mal, diese Basis hier dann, und diese Schaufel und jetzt Cockpit, das zweiteilig.
It just has a lot of big pieces. I'd say that's the only weak point this line has, but it is a big weak point for a building toy to have only so-so builds. In terms of having an atmosphere and a look and feel unique to itself that's made it memorable, Rock Raiders is cool, man. It is not hard to see why it has some pretty hardcore fans. While Ice Planet has inspired mucks aplenty and Life on Mars are pretty scant, Rock Raiders and Power Miners have both inspired a decent amount of mucks over.
Das Problem, weil ich bei Power Miners oft sehe, ist, dass sie das mit dem Orange nicht so ganz verstehen. So hier zum Beispiel, das sollte nicht orange sein. So, nur das ist orange eigentlich. Und das hier müsste auch orange sein. So. Und schauen wir uns nochmal die anderen Mocks an. Also erstmal müssten die Teile, glaube ich, orange sein eigentlich. Und das hier grün. Das, okay. Das hier ist halt ein bisschen bland, weil es zu wenig Werkzeug hat. Da hätten die sicher noch irgendwo so ein paar Schläuchchen machen können. Das hier ist tatsächlich gut. Also das hier ist tatsächlich hier so orange als andere. Ja. Und ich weiß nicht mal, was das hier überhaupt sein soll, aber es kann sich nicht fortbewegen. Hier ist so eine Bionicle-Maske, das ist auf jeden Fall cool. Hier ist noch Random Style, aber keine Ahnung. Und natürlich diese nicht möglichen
amount of mucks over the years. Ultimately, I think these are both good themes. I just think Power Miners has more detailed involving builds with fun features, while Rock Raiders has more character. They each have strengths that seem to make up for the weaknesses of the other, if that makes any sense. It's hard to say which has more substance, as you can have a great build that's still bland, but you don't want it to be all flash either. But as a toy, I'd say Power Miners has at least a slight edge. Which of these lines did you like back in the day? Anyone here dipped their toes into both of them? If you enjoyed this series and wanted to continue, you can make it easier by sharing these videos and checking out my...
Ja, das war cool. Nettes Video.